All right, it's 6:02. In the interest of time, I'm going to get started and hope to have this wrapped off in about an hour. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Sarah Taglienti. I am the Director of Guidance and School Counseling at Bellingham High School. I am joined tonight by Hannah Camille, one of our school counselors, and Catherine Kearney, another one of our school counselors. So we're just going to take you through a Google slide presentation. We have a lot of information to cover, and we know that it can seem like a lot. So the last couple of years, we have really found that doing this via Zoom and having it recorded is beneficial for families to be able to take a moment, watch it on their own time, watch it with your students. I think it's important information to that they see as well. They'll get this presentation in school, hopefully during some win blocks over the next couple of weeks or individually with their counselor. But we suggest that you sit down and watch this together, just so that you're both on the same page and that you're both getting the same information at the same time. Okay, so as I said, I'm joined tonight by Miss Kearney and Miss Camille. We also have Mrs. Howarth, who is out on maternity leave, but she is due to be back in mid-November. We have a wonderful counselor, Mr. Todd Nicholson, who many of your students have probably already met. He is filling in for Mrs. Howarth until November. He has got over 10 years of experience as a school counselor, is really familiar with the college application process. So he will be working with your students and guiding them through that in Mrs. Howarth's absence. Okay, so this is just our agenda for the night. Our slide presentation is going to cover some data from last year's graduating class. We'll go over graduation requirements and college admission criteria. We'll talk you through gathering college information, building a college list, and also the mass transfer option, which is offered by all of our Massachusetts community colleges. We'll go over admission and testing policies, Naviance, what the process looks like at Bellingham High School, because each school does things a little bit differently with paperwork and different forms that need to be filled out. So we'll make sure that you have all of that information. And then at the end, we'll have time for any questions. And of course, as always, you're welcome to reach out to your counselor, your child's counselor, if you'd like to come in and meet with them, if you'd like to have a phone conversation, if you have specific questions that you need to have answered. We always welcome families getting involved, and we can even set up appointments if you want to meet with the counselor and your student at the same time during the school day. So please reach out to the counselor directly to organize those meetings, and we'd be happy to host those. Okay, so I thought it would just be helpful to start off with some information about our past graduating class. So I want to show you just some data from the class of 2024 that just graduated from Bellingham High School. 71% of our students decided to go to a four-year private or public college or university. 16% decided to go to a two-year college or a technical or trade school. Some of our most popular schools for students to apply to, I've listed here on the screen with the graphics. So last year in particular, we had a lot of students apply and also enroll at schools in New England. So we do have some students that choose to apply to schools down south and out west, but most of our students, even if they apply places across the country, they do decide to enroll locally. Luckily, we have a really great Massachusetts State University system, so there's some great opportunities and programs right in our backyard. But I thought it would be helpful just to share some of that information with you, just so that you know where historically a lot of our students will apply and decide to attend. Okay, so now we're going to jump into the graduation and admissions requirements. Mrs. Camille is going to take you through this portion of our slideshow.
Awesome. So in order to receive a Bellingham High School diploma, all seniors must earn 23 credits and then pass all three bio, English, and science, math MCAS tests And then seniors are required to attempt 6 credits, so they need to be enrolled in 6 credits during their senior year and pass 4.5 of them to be eligible for graduation. You can see the list of credits required. English is 4 years, science, math, and social studies is 3 years or 3 credits, 2 years of the same world language, 2 credits of wellness or a half a credit each year, a half a credit of an art or music, and a half a credit of a technology class. We do complete a senior contract during our senior meetings with all of our seniors and go over what credits they still need and just share where they are in terms of meeting all the graduation requirements. And then the Massachusetts State University requirements are slightly different, not much than our Bellingham High School requirements. So Massachusetts State Universities require 4 years of both English and math and want students to take a math course in their senior year. They look for 3 years of a lab science, 2 years of social studies, 2 credits of a world language, again in the same language, and then 2 credits of electives. And then this is a list of what colleges are looking for in terms of deciding if they're going to admit students or not. So they're going to look at your high school transcript, which is just a list of all your courses that you've taken throughout your high school career, the grade you got, and the level of the course, and then how many credits you earned. They really want to see that students are appropriately challenging themselves for what makes sense for them. So that doesn't necessarily mean they need to be enrolled in every single AP class. The admissions staff are just looking that they're appropriately challenging themselves throughout their 4 years as the years go on. Schools are looking at possibly SAT or ACT scores, so standardized tests, although many schools are test optional at this point. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the presentation. Colleges are looking at letters of recommendation from teachers, counselors, sometimes coaches or employers. They're going to look at students' extracurricular activities. What kinds of things are they involved in? I always remind students it's not so much about like how many things you're involved in, but more about being involved in a few things really in depth that you actually really enjoy. Some schools are going to do an interview, although many are not conducting interviews anymore. And then they're also going to look at the student's college essay, so their personal statement that they write about themselves. And then another thing just to note is many colleges are looking at, making sure they have a really great group of students on their campus. So whatever your student can put forward in their application that helps them to stand out is always a bonus. I always tell students, I don't feel so weird to brag about yourself, but like this is the time to do it. So if you're ever not sure, we're happy to help decide if it's worth putting on the application. But if they, play a sport or play an instrument, those are things that are great to include. Or another example is like campuses are really looking to make sure they have a diverse group of students on campus. So for example, if they're applying to like an out-of-state school, that campus might be looking for students that are from Massachusetts because they'd be out of state at another campus. So yeah.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about how you and your students can gather all the information that's out there. One resource that would be really great and valuable for both you and your student is to be logged into our Google Classroom. Here we post different information regarding college visits that happen at Bellingham, as well as any information that we receive from schools on programs and such. We also update students with things that are happening in the college process, application process. So to log in, you go to Google Classroom, their website, you sign in using your Google account, and then you can click the plus symbol on the top right corner and you would type in this code below. Good. So another way for students to be gathering information regarding colleges is by having their senior meeting. Mrs. Drake is our counseling secretary this year, and she's been already booking a lot of the senior meetings. So encourage your students to check their email, check their Google Calendar, because most of those invites have already been sent out for your student to attend this meeting. We go over the application process, talk about their list of schools, how to apply to college, the different apps and technology that they can be using, which we'll talk about later on. Some other things to gather information regarding schools is to attend virtual college fairs. Doing a simple search on these NACAC and the NEACAC fairs. If you type those in, their information will pop out. There's also on a lot of schools' websites virtual college campus tours that you can take, or going on to campus and taking an actual tour. So you can sign up for those through a college's website. It's also important to pay special attention to application deadlines and to use a checklist to help organize information. Some schools' deadlines for early action, which we'll talk about later, start as soon as October 15th, and we see those go throughout the winter, depending on when your student's applying. We also have a bunch of schools who are sending admissions reps to Bellingham, and they are doing some visits during lunch. So information regarding that would be posted in the Google Classroom about when those are happening. So if your student is interested in a specific college and that's on the list, it'd be really helpful for your kid to go, because that may be the same person who's reading over their application. So it's really valuable for them to be there. Something else that we're going to touch base on today is how to build the list of colleges that a student will be applying to, and then also about the mass transfer option. So we encourage students to have a balanced list of schools that they're applying to, and we give certain names to these schools, the first being a reach school. So we typically encourage students to have 1 or 2 reaches on their application list. And a reach school is pretty much one where the GPA and SAT scores that a student has might be below average for accepted students at that school. It's statistically maybe unlikely they would be accepted, but it is a school they're interested in. So having 1 or 2 of those is fine. And then we encourage students to have 3 or 4 target schools. So that's where the student's GPA and SAT scores match the average for accepted students at that school. And they would be statistically likely to be accepted to that given school. We encourage students to also have at least 1 safety. This would be a school where their GPA and SAT scores are above the average for accepted students at that school. And it's, again, statistically more likely they'd be accepted. Along with an academic safety, which would be GPA and SAT scores, it's also important to have a financial safety. School is expensive, so having schools that tuition costs may be lower, such as Massachusetts state schools, or even community colleges through the mass transfer program, would be more financial safeties for students.
I just wanted to comment on one thing, Mrs. Kearney. So you might be asking yourselves as parents, how many schools should my student be applying to? We've seen a trend in the last couple of years of students applying to way more schools than they need to be applying to. I had a student last year who had over 20 schools that they applied to, which is more than Common App allows you to apply to. So then that student could no longer use Common App for their application and had to find a different way to apply to those schools. So I think it has a lot to do with TikTok. I think it has a lot to do with students on social media and seeing different places, which is great in one way. But you really want to make sure that when your student's adding a school to a list that they're going to apply to, that they would be happy going to that school. If you're just applying to a school because, oh, I got an email that I can get, a free application, but you haven't gone to visit and you haven't really looked into if they even have a program that your student's interested in, you shouldn't be applying to that school, because remember, these schools cost money to apply to as well. So you're talking, $50 per application. Some are more than that, some are less, but it really does start to add up. So I always tell students, prior to COVID and in the years following COVID, we had an average of 8 to 10 um, schools on our students' lists, which is a manageable list for students. It's a manageable list for parents. When you start to get into the teens with the number of places you're applying to, it starts to get overwhelming and it starts to get a little bit more confusing. And you should just be making sure that you're only putting schools on the list that you'd be happy going to. There are going to be a few reaches, financially or a few reaches academically that your student just, has fallen in love with the campus or everyone in my family has gone there. And we definitely encourage students to still keep those schools on the list. But just because they see something on TikTok or Instagram and think, oh, I want to get involved in Greek life there, like that's not a good enough reason. So just make sure that you're kind of watching what your students are doing in terms of building their lists and advising them in that way so that they aren't spending too much of their own money or your money on schools that they actually don't want to go to. Okay. So we're going to move on to the mass transfer option. Mrs. Kearney is going to talk about that really affordable option for Massachusetts high school students applying to community college.
Yeah. So, what students can do is they can start at one of our Massachusetts community colleges. Some of those might be Bristol Community College or Mass Bay, where they would complete their associate's degree, which they have to do within 2.5 years. After completing that degree, they are able to transfer to one of the Massachusetts state universities or UMass campuses. And they would then finish their 2 years to receive a bachelor's degree. In order to do this, they must maintain a full-time enrollment and a continuous enrollment and receive a 3.0 GPA throughout their time at the Mass Community College. It's a really great option for students who are looking maybe to save some money or boost their grades up to get some credits before heading to a state school.
I'm going to talk a little bit about admission and testing policies. So many of our students have been coming down asking really great questions about trying to strategize how and when to apply to college. So there are 5 different types of admissions plans that your student can choose to follow. So they are early decision, early action, regular decision, rolling admissions, and open admissions. And I'm going to go through and talk about each one and what the differences are and what the benefits to applying in this way could be for your student. So early decision is an admission policy that's known as binding. It means that once you apply to that school, and you can only apply to one school under early decision, if you are accepted, you have to attend that school. There aren't many ways around being able to get out of it. Those deadlines are usually earlier on in the admissions application process, so usually early to mid-November. Ms. Kearney mentioned earlier, some schools down south are even earlier and start around October 15th. So if your student is applying early decision, your student is saying to that college, I am applying early decision. I am only applying to one school early decision, and I love your school so much that I will go to this school regardless of how much financial aid you are willing to give me because I really want to go to your school. So as you can imagine, there's not many seniors in high school that are feeling that decisive about a certain college. So we usually have maybe one, sometimes none, students apply under early decision. A way more popular option for students and something that we highly recommend for most of our seniors is the plan that's called early action. So you have the same timeline to work with, usually mid-November. A lot of the Massachusetts state universities have November 1st or November 15th as their early action deadline. But this process is non-binding. So that means you can apply to many schools under early action. And you don't have to decide where you're going to attend until May 1st. And it's really the student showing the college, I'm very interested in your school. I did a lot of work my junior year and figured out my college list. I have a really strong GPA. and I'm making the commitment to show you that I really want to go to your school. So it gives the student options. I think it's great personally because, if your students put in the work and had three really solid years at Bellingham High School in ninth, 10th, and 11th grade, and their GPA is above, a 3.2, and it's really a target school for your child, there's really no harm in applying early. They find out sooner whether or not they've been accepted, which gives them more time to make a decision on where to enroll, because you have to do that by May 1st. So in the crazy hustle and bustle of senior year, a lot of students really put in the time now to get their early applications done, and then they find out some by Christmas whether they've been accepted. And then the rest of their year is really focused on enjoying the end of senior year, applying for scholarships, trying to avoid senioritis, but it really takes that stress out of, just submitting your applications in January and February when those regular decisions come along. So as I said, regular decision is another non-binding option. You can apply to more than one school. Those deadlines are usually from January to March. But you are limiting yourself in that you'll find out later whether or not you've been accepted. And so making that decision to turn around and commit to a school by May 1st and sending in your deposit for housing, you end up not having as much time to review your financial aid package and to figure out what decision is best for your family. There's rolling admissions, which is also non-binding. And all rolling admissions means is that once you submit your application, it's reviewed on a rolling basis. So instead of waiting till a certain deadline and then reviewing applications all at once, in rolling admissions, colleges accept applications on a rolling basis and then make decisions usually within 2 to 4 weeks of receiving the application. A lot of community colleges operate under rolling admissions. Some private four-year schools will do as well, but it's usually more of an open admissions type policy that uses rolling as their timeline. And then open admissions is mainly for tech schools and community colleges. So the requirements during open admissions are just for a high school diploma or a HiSET, which is the alternative to a high school diploma. So if your student's going to apply to Mass Bay, they can apply at any time and they indicate their expected date of graduation on their application. And then all that's required at the end of the year is a transcript and proof of graduation. So open admissions has no deadline and you can apply at any time. So since the COVID-19 pandemic, and limits within testing sites, to be able to host SATs and ACTs, a lot of schools went test optional. So that was a growing trend, in the early 2000s, that had continued to grow to up over like 1,000 schools nationwide were offering a test optional plan, which just means that students can opt to not submit SAT scores or ACT scores and just have their application reviewed based on their transcript and their extracurriculars and their letters of recommendation. It's kind of trending back the other way now. You may have heard in the news that some of the more competitive schools are going back to their policy of requiring SATs. So it's really important for you as a family to look at these policies that at the schools that your child is applying to. A lot of our students have not taken the SATs because so many colleges have now gone test optional. But some students are still taking them. So it's important to kind of review what your score is and see what each school is looking at in terms of their average SAT score. And then you can kind of decide what makes sense if you should submit your scores or not. A lot of times students will ask us, should I submit them? I got a 1100. Do you think that's good? And that's really so relative to where you're applying. If you're applying to Harvard, I wouldn't submit your 1100 because that's going to be below average. But if you're applying to Worcester State and you have an 1100, well, now you might earn yourself a very nice merit scholarship. So it really just depends on your child's scores and the schools that they're applying to. Another thing to note about test optional policies is that some may advertise themselves as test optional, but in the fine print, they'll tell you if your student's applying as a nursing major or pre-med track or engineering track, that the test optional policy does not apply for those majors. So that's just something that you should be aware of. Um, some schools, like I said, use that score to determine eligibility for merit scholarships. Many use the score of 1200 and above to be able to offer certain merit scholarships, and that's without your child even applying to a certain scholarship. If they submit their SAT scores and they're above a 1200, they could just qualify automatically for certain merit. But again, that varies school to school. And then some schools are what's called test blind, which means that they won't consider SAT scores even if you send them. So that's a little bit different than test optional because they don't want to see your scores. And if you send them, they tell you they will not look at them because they really want to take a more holistic approach to the student's application. So as I said, it's important that you check with each college admissions department for guidelines around test optional because it can mean so many different things. And then fairtest.org is just a great resource, and it gives you a list of all of the schools across the US that have test optional policies as part of their admissions plans. Okay, so moving on to Naviance. Many of you know what Naviance is. Your students have been on it. They know it. It's our online web-based application that kind of fuels our application process. So we as counselors use Naviance to send your child's transcript, school report, letter of recommendation electronically by the click of a button to all the schools your child's applying to. When we sit down with your child in their senior meeting, we have a process that we cover with them called matching accounts with Common App and then also signing off on a FERPA waiver. So we walk students through that step by step, and what that allows them to do is kind of move from Naviance to Common App and just use Common App as their hub of information, and it automatically updates on Naviance for us so we can see where the student's applying, if they're applying early action, what the deadlines are. And then teachers use Naviance to submit their letters of recommendation. So when we sit with students, we go over this process and we make sure, that they know their password, that they can log on, that they know how to use their Naviance account. Some other things that Naviance is great for is if your child is kind of just starting their search and maybe over the summer just decided, you know what, I think I do want to go to a four-year college. There's a lot of assessments embedded into Naviance that assess your child's interests and personality style. You can do college searches based on various criteria to kind of get that jumping point and that starting point to start building your list. Parents don't get access to Naviance accounts, but you're welcome to use your child's account. If your student has forgotten their password or needs it reset, Mrs. Drake or their school counselor would be happy to reset their password for them. But this again is in addition to Google Classroom, one of the major programs that we use with our students in order to drive this process and submit the appropriate paperwork. There are a few things in Naviance that your child has to do when they're applying. And so those are the colleges I'm applying to list, which is their like official application list of schools they're applying to. It houses the names of the schools, whether they're applying early action or regular, what the deadlines are. They need to send a letter of recommendation request to their teacher through Naviance. They request their transcript through Naviance, and again, that there's some super match and interest inventories that can help students figure out what they're interested in, what major they should choose. So if you feel like your child needs some more exploration in that area, we're happy to sit down and do that with them as well, all through their Naviance account. And you can access those results as well through their account. So students are required to add colleges to their colleges I'm applying to list on Naviance. Like I said, we use this list to stay organized with sending supporting documents to colleges. So it's the student's responsibility to make sure this list is accurate and up to date. Every year we have students say, oh, I applied direct and I didn't use Common App and they never added it to their Naviance list. So unless the student comes down and says, hey, I applied to this other school, there's no way for counselors to know that your child has submitted that application. So it's really important that they keep their Naviance or their Common App list up to date. They also have to request letters of recommendation from teachers through Naviance. We have screencastifys and video tutorials on the Google Classroom on how to do that. I usually, as part of my senior meetings, and I think the other counselors would agree, show students how to do this and do one example with them so that they feel comfortable doing it for another teacher. But we're happy to walk students through that if we need to, multiple times as well. All right, and I think now what does this process look like at Bellingham High School is going to be covered by Hannah.
Yes. So obviously, as we've gone over, this is a ton of information and a lot to keep track of. So we're going to talk next about like what the process looks like and what the responsibilities are of the student specifically. So Sarah, if you can go to the next slide. Perfect. So on our Google Classroom page, there is a senior responsibility checklist among many other resources, but I think this is a really good starter resource because it gives a whole list of sort of like do this and then do this and then do this. So it's a really helpful checklist for seniors to use. In terms of the actual application process, so the Common App we've been talking about a lot. This is an online college application portal that applicants use. There's probably over 900 different colleges and universities that use the Common App. So more than likely your student will be using the Common App in some form. There are, however, a few colleges that don't use the Common App. So a few colleges will accept either their own application or Common App, but some will only accept their own application, which means that the student would go on to that college's website and fill out the application from there. And then to be able to figure out if they're accepting Common App or not, you can check right on their website, the college's website, and actually you can check Common App, and then you also can check on Naviance too to see what the college is using for an application. All right, so then in terms of like, what is my student responsible for? I always tell students like, we are here to help them with this process and we are happy to answer whatever questions they need, but there are pieces of this that they need to make sure that they do by a certain time so that we can help them. So in terms of standardized testing, so if students do decide to take the SATs or the ACTs, they're responsible for sending their SAT score reports right through the College Board. So they just log on to the College Board or ACT.org and put in what colleges they want their scores sent to, and then you have to pay an additional fee usually, except I think you get free score reports on College Board. And after that, you have to pay for each additional school. And then you send it right to the schools through College Board. And then there's just the information for Common App right there. Commonapp.org is the website. All right, and then the other piece that students are responsible for in terms of the letters of recommendation, so they need to ask at least two teachers for letters of recommendation, and then us as counselors, we write a letter for all of our students, so they don't actually have to ask us. But in order for us and their teachers to write their letters of recommendation, we need what's called the teacher recommendation information sheet. So this is also available on the Google Classroom page, and we have some hard copies in our office. Just like an 8 or 9 question survey that asks students to fill out information that helps make sure that we and their teachers are writing like the best letter that we can for your students. So this is a really important piece of the letter writing. And then as Sarah talked about, they need to go in through Naviance and request the teachers through Naviance. And then the other piece is this big college essay that everybody always talks about. So I do know that most English classes at Bellingham in senior year are working on their essays at some point in the beginning of this year. So that's a really helpful tool for seniors who are looking for some support in writing their essay. But I think my best piece of advice is like, this is a really important piece of the process. And it's what admissions counselors will use to really get to know your students. So it can be helpful for them to share something that maybe wasn't already shared somewhere else in the application. And then the other purpose that it serves is so that the colleges can see their writing style and their writing. So it's really important that you're checking these essays for grammar mistakes, spelling mistakes, making sure that there really are no writing issues within the essay either. And I think that there's linked at the bottom right there a tool for if students need some extra help with their essays. All right, so then a few other things that the student is responsible for. So they have to submit their transcript request through Naviance, which we also go over how to do this during their senior meetings. And I think there's a video on the Google Classroom page, but it's pretty much just the click of a button on Naviance, but they just have to remember to do this. We ask students to do this at least 2 weeks before their first deadline so that counselors and teachers have enough time to get all their materials together and have everything prepared to be sent on time. And then the other piece of this is a parent or guardian needs to sign a transcript release form. So this will get emailed to parents if it hasn't already. I know I've been sending them as I've been having senior meetings with students. So it'll just be an email to Google form that should only take a minute, but it's just parents or guardians giving us permission to send off transcripts to colleges. And then at the bottom here is just some information about financial aid. So it sounds like the FAFSA will be available on December 1st again, but you can, I think as of right now, still go on and apply for your FAFSA ID. So this is something that you will need when you fill out the FAFSA. So it would be great to get on and get that part completed and just have one step out of the way. And then the CS. Go ahead.
Ms. Camille,
Yeah.
so I was talking to one admissions
Yeah.
counselor today, and breaking news from this counselor was that the FAFSA is not going to be ready until December 1st. It sounds like they're going to start to kind of test the application starting in October with certain people. This is all information directly from an admissions counselor at a local college that I spoke with today. So they're kind of reeling a little bit only because it kind of shortens the time that they have to figure out who gets what money. Because they're waiting to see what the government says your expected family contribution is. So the only way to kind of speed this up right now is to apply for your FSA ID, which is how you're identified through the financial aid process. So as long as you have your social security number and enter your name, you're able to get your FSA ID. So I would recommend that everybody does that now so that when it does go live on December 1st, you can start filling that out as soon as possible.
Thank you for the up-to-date information. And then the FAFSA is the federal aid that students can apply for. The CSS profile is another financial aid application. This is mostly needed from private schools, and it's through the College Board website. And then we will have local scholarship information available in the spring. So we have a separate Google Classroom page for local scholarships where students will be notified of when applications become ready. I highly, highly encourage students to apply for those because it is like a small pool of students. They're just usually Bellingham students or the really small area around Bellingham students that are applying for those. So they are a great opportunity. This is some information on the NCAA process. So if your student is thinking about playing a sport at either the Division I or Division II level, it's really important that they create an NCAA certification account, which would allow them. It allows us to upload their transcript and make sure that everything on their transcript looks right and gets approved and that they'd be eligible to play at the Division I or Division II level. It's not necessary if they're thinking of playing Division III sport in college. And this kind of outlines the process for that. So, but if your student's thinking of Division I or Division II, just make sure they let their counselor know.
All right, now we're going to just do a little review of what each website does. So we have do you want to hit the next slide, Sarah? Thank you. So we have the Common App, Naviance, and College Board, which we've all talked about today. The Common App is that website that students are using to apply to schools. Many of them, many schools that students apply to are through Common App. Again, some use their own application portal, but those are just a few schools that do that. We also have Naviance, which is where your student is going to be creating that list of colleges that they're applying to. It's where they can explore colleges, also take some of those inventory tests for interest. This is where they need to be requesting their transcripts and their letters of recommendation as well. We also have the College Board, and that is where students sign up for SATs, and then also that's where they'll be sending their scores to colleges. So some next steps for students, the big thing being to not procrastinate. This is a process that takes a little bit of time, so it's important to break it up into small chunks. That's what I've been reminding all my students to do, is make little goals for themselves each week. But they can start this by meeting with us, their school counselors. A lot of them have already met with us or have meetings on the books, but if they don't, make sure they're reaching out to us and we can help them. So it's important to also research some schools, create that list of colleges that they're applying to, organize their deadlines, maybe using a tracker or another method that works for them, and then to start their college applications using the Common App or their college's websites. They can also be reaching out to college admissions counselors by going to the websites, getting information on contacts. Typically, if you go to a college website and under admissions, you can find a contact info for the admissions office, and that's where you could schedule interviews or reach out to admissions counselors with questions that you may have. Also working on the college essay. I know a lot of students are working on that right now in English class, but that's an important thing to start doing. And then talking to teachers to get letters of recommendations. Again, we ask 2 weeks at least for a heads up on needing a letter of recommendation. And your student would be getting that letter of rec by filling out that form for us. Then creating your FAFSA ID right now so that it has time to process so that you can start your FAFSA form on December 1st. As we talked about before, it does cost money to apply to colleges, but we don't want that to be a barrier for any student in the college application process. So please reach out. We have fee waivers if you feel that your child or your family needs that in order for you to be able to apply to college. Please reach out to us and we can help out.
Okay, so to wrap up, and as a please don't forget, our class of 2025 school counseling Google Classroom is your best place for the most up-to-date information. We will post the recording of this there. If there's one thing you take from this presentation, it's to join the Google Classroom. 90% of the time, if you have a question and you're for some reason up at 2 a.m. and you're like, geez, I wonder if my son did that. I think she said he was supposed to do that by this deadline. You can't send us an email at 2 a.m. Well, you could, but we probably won't see it until the next morning. But you can check the Google Classroom because the information is probably there for you. So it's just a great resource. We're able to post things there in real time when we get information. So please make sure you're joining that. Encourage your students to attend WinBlock help sessions. So we as counselors will offer in the lecture hall throughout the fall just help sessions for students that need help with Common App. How do I match my account? How do I invite a teacher? I forgot how you showed me to do that. How do I upload my my courses when I have to self-report what I'm taking in the Common App? Any of those things, if they don't want to have a separate meeting with a counselor, they can come down to the lecture hall. They don't need to sign up. They can just kind of come in, get, their questions asked, get their answers, and then get on their way with their day. So we'll be doing that, and we'll publish those dates on the Google Classroom so students know, also on the morning announcements when those help sessions will be. We do have a college fair coming up at our own high school on October 3rd. So we have, I think it's up to 41 local schools attending. And so all juniors and seniors will have about 45 minutes to walk around, talk to college reps, get more information, ask about, majors, ask about trends at their school. We invite parents to come in as well. So if you want to come to that, you just have to sign in the main office, get your visitor's pass, and you can come down to the gym. That's going to be on October 3rd from 8:30 to 10. Um, and then I can't stress this enough as well. Financial aid is changing. It changed last year. As counselors, we're educated as much as possible on the new trends, and it's almost impossible as counselors to keep up with the information as it comes out. We try our best to do that. We go to professional development on it. But last year there were a ton of changes, and this year it sounds like there have been some glitches as well. So we rely a lot on MEFA, which is the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority. They're like the experts that we go to for training, but they're also accessible to you direct. So MEFA has a lot of webinars and live Zoom sessions multiple times a week. If you check their website, it's linked here. You can see when those are offered. They also have a really great program called MEFA Fairs, where you can register to attend one of these sessions listed on this slide, and you can actually go into breakout rooms and get on the spot live help from a person from MEFA while you're at your computer filling out the FAFSA. So a lot of our families took advantage of that last year and found it to be really helpful because they may have done this before a few years ago, but the FAFSA itself has changed dramatically. So I would really suggest doing one of these in December, only because if it goes live December 1st, there's going to be a lot of people trying to fill that application out throughout the month of December. So you're going to want to get the information and the help you need right away. And then we do have an Instagram account that we update. A lot of the students like to follow that. The same information that goes on Instagram will go on our Google Classroom. So as parents, if you want to join the Google Classroom, you don't need to follow us on Instagram. It's the same information. And then yeah, this little guy is ready to apply to college, and we hope that your students are too. I have to say that the meetings that I've done, these students are ready. A lot of them have come in with their lists, having done a lot of tours over the summer. It seems like the meetings we had with them last year, they really followed their to-do lists and did a lot of work over the summer, which is great. Some of you are probably sitting there being like, wow, I wish that was my kid, because they have no idea where to start, and we can help those kids too. We can meet with our seniors as many times as they need. We want to make sure that all of our seniors have a great plan that they're comfortable with, that their families are comfortable with. So please rely on us as a resource. No question is a stupid question. We live this every day, so sometimes things, that we think maybe aren't confusing can be confusing to parents. So please don't be afraid to reach out to us. We want to help you, and we want to make this process go as smoothly as possible for you and your families. I think we have some time for questions, so I can open it up if anybody has a question. It looks like Mr. McNamara has a question. Miss Camille, are you able to? Here we go. All right.
Hey, good evening. Great information.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's from what I could take, the true advantage of the early action over the regular admission is that it gives the student more time to make a decision, because it gives them a few extra months to decide. Am I understanding correctly?
Yeah, so that's probably the one of the biggest advantages. I think the other one is that colleges have one pool of money, pool of money to give away to students, right? And so the students that apply early action are at an advantage to receive that money, because you've been accepted, you're committing to going to that school sooner than other students applying under regular decision. So you'll get your financial aid information sooner than students with regular decision. So I think those are the two most important factors. Students that don't decide to do early action may decide that they need more time to increase their GPA. They may need another quarter of school to get from a 2.9 to a 3.0. But a lot of our students have done a really good job and have really good transcripts from 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, and are ready to apply to college with their 3.5. The likelihood of a GPA going up a lot in their senior year is pretty small. you might see it go up from a 3.57 to a 3.61. But there's not going to be a huge jump, which I think sometimes students misunderstand. So if your child has had a strong ninth, 10th, and 11th grade, we really suggest early action. And then after first quarter, which is about November 8th, I think first quarter ends, we will forward those transcripts to schools because colleges want to see that the student is still continuing to apply themselves and get good grades in their senior year, even though they've committed to applying early action. So it's important that even though you've submitted your application, that, the students understand that they still need to perform well throughout the course of senior year, because those transcripts after each quarter will get reported to the colleges. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much.
Right, great. Miss Camille, are you able to
No, I think that we'll just have to call. So I think Mrs. Carroll or Mr. Carroll was next. If you want to unmute yourself and ask your
Okay, there we go.
question.
Awesome. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks for the time. Appreciate it. Just a quick question, and I apologize, a little bit tactical, but can you talk a little bit about what this SRAR thing is about? Is it a separate platform? Is it a separate part of the Common App? We're seeing it pop up more and more. I'm just a little confused about it.
Yeah, isn't it wonderful? All these extra things that they're making your children do. So this is the self-reporting academic record. It's fairly new to a lot of state schools. I think UMass Amherst adopted it this year. A lot of our students apply to UMass Amherst. But what this means is that your student now has to sit down with a copy of their transcript in front of them, and they are tasked with entering all of the courses they've taken from 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. What level were the courses? What was their final grade in the course? How many credits did they earn in the course? So it's really just a self-reported transcript. To be honest, I'd like to say it's simplifying the process for students, but it's really just an extra step that they have to take because we still are required to submit their transcript as their official record. I think it's just convenient for colleges to have all that information in one place. But they're making it a requirement, so it needs to get done. We can give students a paper copy of their transcript so that when they're ready to sit down and do that task, which probably takes a good 45 minutes to an hour, that they have all that information right in front of them.
Is that just like a module within the Common App, or is it a completely separate link out to a different?
It's a link out. So it will tell you it's a requirement for the school on Common App, but it actually takes you to a separate portal where you have to upload the information. But it walks you through step by step. We had a few students that had to do this last year. And now more and more schools are following suit.
And I will say too, a few schools will have you fully complete the application and then send you another email saying, okay, you completed the application. You still now have to do the SRAR, and send you to a site on their website to do it. Again, just one more thing to have to do. So I really encourage students to check their emails constantly during this process, because that can pop up out of nowhere and they only have a certain amount of weeks to do it and finish that piece of it. And you might kind of forget about it because it's not really on the application.
Perfect.
Good question.
Thank you.
I think Miss Fantini, did you have a question? If you want to unmute yourself.
Got her hand on.
Hello, thank you so very much. I have two questions. First question is the FAFSA ID. I was reading today that is it two parents and one student, or one parent, one student? Should it be the parent that is the major wage earner, or does that matter?
Miss Camille, can you take that question, just because I have my
Yes.
other
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that when your student goes in to register, it has them answer a few questions that determines who needs to be included in filling out the full application. So it really just kind of depends on each family situation. That's also something you could reach out to MIFA about directly and kind of give like your general situation, and then they would be able to point you in the right direction of like who exactly needs to fill it out. But I think part of the new FAFSA is this set of questions at the beginning that kind of tells you who does need to be included in filling out
Yes,
the application.
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I wanted just to get the, I've already done my ID, but
Yep.
wasn't sure if my husband and my son should do, well, my son should do his.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure if my husband needed to do his.
Yep. So I would have your son do it, and hopefully once it's available, there'll be some questions that he can answer that would determine like who needs to be filling it out. But if you needed to know that before the FAFSA is like fully available, you could reach out to MIFA and they'd be able to help.
Okay, yeah, I don't think it really matters. I just wanted
Yeah.
to make sure that we had all our ducks in a row for December 1st.
Of course.
So, my second question is, and this is something that I've already talked to Miss Kearney about, Jackson, it did the, project Lead the Way for engineering. So he also has, credits through RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology. And so we'll have to request a transcript from them as well, or is that done within the counseling office?
Yep. So you should request. So this goes for any student who's taken like any kind of dual enrollment class or has earned any college credit. You'd want to request a transcript from the institution where they took the class directly.
Okay.
And you can include that, you can send it off to the college to be included with their application.
Okay, and that opens up my next question, which is the CAD drawing class that he's doing through Mass Bay. How does that affect? I mean, he was not done with the class, so there would be no.
Yep. And so that's a class that is like a through Bellingham High. So that one is actually included on their transcript at Bellingham.
Okay.
So there are a couple classes that would be considered dual enrollment that are like legitimate partnerships with Bellingham High School. That means that they're also included on their Bellingham transcript. So for that one, you don't have to worry as much about getting the transcript right away. Whatever school he ends up at might still want it eventually through Mass Bay. But it's something that when we send his transcript with his list of like senior year classes, it will be included on there.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Thank you for all the answers. I appreciate it. Appreciate all of you.
Anybody else have any other questions?
I've got one more question.
Yeah,
What's
go
the
for it.
approximate timelines for, when you apply to when you get an admission decision to when you get financial aid information? Is it, say, 4 weeks between each step, or kind of what time frame should we be considering?
Yeah, that's a good question. And unfortunately, I think it depends on the school, and also is going to depend this year on what happens with the FAFSA and the financial aid process. So I would say, like Sarah said earlier, if you're applying like early November 1, November 15th, even sometimes December 1st, you can